So in our motivation, we started out thinking of the kindness of others, and I think this is a very important thing to think about. And I've noticed for myself that if I think about it consistently, it really affects my mood, and it affects how I live my life quite dramatically. Because our afflicted mind, the mind that is based on ignorance, and the self-centered mind always look at things in terms of the glass, the glass half empty, right? Yeah. So it's like what I lack. I don't have this, and I don't have that. And yeah, people gave me this, but they should have given more. And yes, they did that for me, but gee, they didn't do this other thing for me, and I really wanted them to do that. And so the mind is continually finding ways to criticize people, basically, on the grounds that they don't treat us properly, you know? And that kind of way of looking at life makes us perpetually unhappy. You know, we go around with a feeling of poverty, a feeling of being a victim, of being unloved, unappreciated. You know the story, I think. Okay, and so that becomes a whole way of looking at our life. And it's funny, our culture really encourages that, you know. Yeah, it really encourages it. You know, we have this idea that somehow we came into the world and we should have everything we want. Yeah, that it just should appear. It just should be there. Because I'm here and it should come, and especially we're in America, and you know, and then our parents should have done all these different things for us because we're these precious little jewels, and you know, we deserve the best, and why didn't they give us the best? And the school system, something's wrong with that, and something's wrong with the, you know, our friends, and something's wrong, everything, you know, is screwed up. And so we go through life with that kind of attitude, and that becomes a filter through which we view everything that happens to us, you know, in the sense of what am I not getting? Yeah, and which really, you know, makes us quite down, I think, yeah. Then you need to go get some pills to feel better, but the doctor doesn't give you the prescription you want, or enough of the pills that you want, or the price you want. You know, your antidepressants cost too much. You know, whatever, we always find something wrong with everything. So this meditation is actually designed to help us see what is there that we so often just overlook and ignore, you know, which is people's kindness and how we are the recipient of kindness again and again and again. Yeah, and you know, there's many ways to do the meditation, but even if you take, you know, did people have cereal this morning? Yeah. Okay, so you look at the cereal you had this morning. Then where did that come from? Okay. Well, somebody took it out of the kitchen. Yeah, but where did it come from? You know, the Abbey, we only eat food that's donated to us. So somebody offered the food, which means somebody went to work and they worked hard, probably at a 9-to-5 job or a, you know, or a graveyard shift or something like that. And the money that they got from that, you know, then they used to buy our breakfast. And we don't even know who they are. They may or may not know who we are because We get support from people all around the world who have never been here. And that person, just out of the goodness of their heart, gave us breakfast out of the money that they worked hard to get, that they chose to give away instead of use for themselves or their families. Yeah. And then, you know, where did the cereal itself come from? Well, somebody, you know, if you had oatmeal or whatever, somebody grew the oats. Okay, so, you know, some farmer was out in the field planting oats, you know, taking care of the weeds, harvesting them. Then somebody else has to put it, you know, in a truck and carry it to the place where they're processed. And then other people take it out of the truck and they, you know, take off the chaff and they, you know, do whatever they have to do to, you know, grind the oats so that it becomes easy to cook. And then somebody else put it into different containers, and somebody else shipped the containers to the grocery store, and somebody else unloaded it and put the you know, boxes of oatmeal on the shelf. Yeah. And all of this happened long before the person who donated it to the Abbey even was around. So we see like so many people involved in our having oatmeal. But you don't just have the oatmeal, you also have raisins in your oatmeal. So where did they come from? And the nuts you put in your oatmeal, where did they come from? And the milk or the soy milk that you put in your oatmeal, where did they come from? So you look at any, it's very interesting, take a whole meditation and just take one meal that you have and trace back the number of beings that were involved in it, you know. And it's not just, you know, the people who got the oats and the raisins and the nuts, but it was prepared in a kitchen. Okay, so somebody prepared it, but it was prepared on a stove. Now, who made the stove? Where did the stove come from? Again, there were people who donated money to the Abbey to buy the stove. Yeah. Who made the stove? How many people were involved in making a stove? You know? I mean, there were people who designed it and, you know, people in different factories who made different bits of the stove. There's how many parts? And, you know, who knows how many factories were involved in making all these different parts of the stove? And where did the metal come from for the stove? Some miners spent their day underground. I mean, what an awful job. And mining is so dangerous, you know, to get the metal that then somebody else, you know, drove in a truck to another factory where it was melted down and made into these different parts. Yeah, and that's just the metal in the stove. I'm sure there's some other things too. And the stove is by propane. So then you have the hose that goes to the propane line. You have the propane tank. Who made the tank? What's the tank made out of? Is it plastic? Is it metal? Who designed a propane tank? Who made it so that the gas can come out in the right amount in the stove so that it doesn't blow up every time you light it? You know? So there's some engineers who had to really figure that whole thing out. And how do you keep the pilot light going? And how do you place the tank in the earth so that, you know, I mean, it's back by the meditation field. So some people had to dig, you know, in the earth. You should have seen it when it was all dug up back there, you know, to lay the line and put the tank in. And then, you know, somebody had to design the whole system for the Abbey, and then Venerable Tarpa and Venerable Sultram were, you know, involved in overlooking the whole project, and so was the contractor. And then somebody comes up, like once a year or however often it is, to fill up the propane tank. And where do they get the propane? How many people are involved in getting propane and shipping it? And that's probably not a real safe job, you know, because propane is flammable. Yeah. And when you look at it, just, I mean, there's a whole lot behind one bowl of oatmeal. And who built the rest of the kitchen? Yeah? Because the stove just doesn't exist in space. You know, it sits on a tile floor. So there was somebody who installed the floor. And there were people who made the tile floor and shipped the tiles and lifted the tiles. I don't know if you're familiar with tiles. They are extremely heavy. They come in packages like just about this big, you know, but they are so heavy. And some guy spent days in there, you know, with the grout, because you have to use the grout, and, you know, glue the tile in first and then putting the grout in. And, you know, when you go back, I mean, there's so many people involved in making the building that the stove stands in that made your oatmeal. Okay, then that's just the oatmeal. What about the soy milk? Yeah, what about the cow's milk? And so when we really look, I mean, behind everything, there's the efforts of so many people. Yeah. And now we could say, well, yeah, but they did it to earn a living. Yeah, so they didn't do it for me, so why should I see them as kind? And the point is not who they did it for. The point is that they did it and we benefited from it. Because if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have had our delicious oatmeal, which we probably just gobbled up without even thinking about all the beings behind it. Yeah. So this meditation, you know, makes us, you know, when they talk about being in the moment, I think this meditation makes us be in the moment in the sense of looking at everything I have is involved with the energy of so many living beings. Some of them animals, some of them people. Yeah, some people or insects may have even lost their lives. Yeah, and to really have this sense of, wow, you know, the universe is taking care of me. All these living beings are taking care of me, even they don't even know me. Yeah, and I'm the beneficiary of all this. So you really, you know, when you meditate deeply on this, then you really feel like, wow, I've been the recipient of a tremendous amount of kindness my entire life. Yeah, not just this one bowl of oatmeal, but, you know, my entire life. And, you know, then you start thinking of, you know, what your parents had to do to raise you. Yeah, were any of you, do you think, easy children to raise? We'll ask your mom. I think she might have another idea. Yeah, I mean, from the time we came out of the womb, you know, what did we do? We woke up in the middle of the night shrieking, and our parents had to get up and feed us. Yeah, now how would you like it if every night when you're sleeping, somebody started crying and you had to get up and feed them? I wouldn't like it. You know, would you like it, having to get up every night for like 2 or 3 years? Not one night break? And then if the baby's sick, you're not just getting up once a night, but several times a night? Yeah? And so you're constantly sleep deprived? And the baby never says thank you. Yeah. The baby just goes, ah, ah. Yeah, give me more. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. And then, you know, our parents taught us to talk. Can you imagine that? They sat there and went goo goo gaga, you know, and taught us, you know, they would sit in front of us and talk to us and make the sound slowly so that we would see the shape of their mouth and mimic it. And that way they taught us to talk. And they would sit and point at things. Yeah, watch when you're in an airport or bus station, how parents treat their kids, and how they point to the things and teach them the names for different things. Yeah, and so speech is something we take so much for granted, and yet we talk simply because of the kindness of so many people who taught us. Yeah, it's quite amazing when you think about it, because imagine if nobody taught you to speak. Yeah, and you went through life not knowing how to speak, not knowing when people made sounds what they meant, because nobody taught you. I mean, we couldn't do anything that we're doing now. Yeah? And then they gave us an education, yeah, sent us to school. Yeah. Were we willing students going happily into class? Yeah, or I was a good kid when I was little, but still, even me, you know, my mother tells a story of, you know, I would always feel sick right before the school bus came. And then she'd let me stay home because I didn't feel well. And I felt better after the school bus went around the corner. But I got to stay home and watch my favorite TV programs. My mom was smart. That didn't go on too long. Yeah, but you know, look at how we made difficulties. And do you remember, you know, the things we did to our teachers sometimes? Yeah? And I mean, how uncooperative we were and belligerent and, you know, accused them of playing favorites and, you know, when we failed a test or didn't do well on a test, blaming the teacher and, yeah? And then, you know, if you've ever been a teacher, oh my goodness. Teachers are underappreciated and underpaid and overworked. Really, nobody appreciates their grade school teachers. And yet, without our grade school teachers, we wouldn't have the basic skills to live a life. Yeah, we wouldn't even know how to read and write. Yeah, I mean, imagine, you know, you couldn't read or write. But, you know, we have those skills because people taught us. Even though we ditched class, even though we all dropped our rulers at 10 o'clock, even though we all complained about the teachers to the principal, yeah? I mean, sometimes we're so uncooperative. And yet they continued to teach us, and somehow, despite ourselves, we managed to learn something that is actually useful in our lives. You know, that the teachers didn't give up on us. Yeah? When I was teaching my first class, oh my goodness, the first class they gave me, it was in the inner city. So it was very difficult, you know, and kids who were underprivileged in chaotic homes and so on. So I was really doing my best, you know, to help them. And I was almost getting the class under control. And then a new kid came to the school named Maurizio. And they put Maurizio in my class, probably because I was a new teacher and nobody else wanted Maurizio. Well, I really wonder what happened to poor Maurizio. I mean, this kid, whatever you do, whatever you say, you know, he had an opinion about it and he rebelled against it, you know. And as much as you try and show kindness, as much as you do anything, whatever you do is wrong. You know? And there you are as a teacher. And it's not just Maurizio in your classroom. You have 34 other kids who are trying to learn. And you know, this like one kid just totally wears you out. And you come home like fried, and you have to prepare lesson plans, and you have to correct papers, and you have to make learning centers, and you have to attend meetings. And you know, when you're a kid in school, you never realize what teachers go through. Yeah, we always see them as, you know, kind of bossing or trying to control us or whatever. And yet it's because of what they did that we managed to learn anything in our lives. Yeah? Do you remember grade school? Oh, I remember. You know, I grew up in California, and so studying California history, you know, in 4th grade. And you know, we had to take turns reading out loud to the class what the history book said. So boring, you know. And then some people couldn't read properly, yeah. And so you have to really help them. You know, it was like, because to me, you know, I majored in history in university, but you know, they always tell history from the point of view of economics and war. Yeah, and some politics. Those 3 things are how history's told. I wanted to know how people lived. Yeah, but then when they taught you how they lived, we learned about the California Indians and how they wove baskets. Well, I didn't, you know, tell me more. What were these people like? Yeah, what did they feel? Were they happy people? Were they unhappy people? Yeah, but they don't tell you that in school, you know. They say, well, they wove baskets, and they did this, and they did that, and then there was the gold rush. You know, and then there was whatever they did. Mm-hmm. And yet, you know, I really value knowing something about those things now. You know, it gave me some idea of the history of, you know, the part of the country where I grew up in. And that helps me understand what's going on now in the country. But, you know, what I'm getting at, the whole point here is that we've just been the recipient of a tremendous amount of kindness, and to realize that and to really feel it in our heart. And not feel it in the sense of, wow, everybody's been kind, I'm just going to sit here and soak it up, you know? Because I think the more we feel that we've been the recipient of kindness, then automatically the more we want to repay kindness. You know, I think that there's something in us human beings that, you know, as much as we're selfish and we do sometimes just take without thinking about other people, somewhere in us there's the thing of I want to reciprocate. I want to give back, you know? And giving back feels good, yeah? Because somehow, you know, if we just take all the time, inside of us, yeah? Do you know what I'm talking about inside of you? It's just like, I'm taking all the time. I don't feel so good about myself, yeah? I want to give back, you know? I need to share. So this is kind of like what I was talking about yesterday. I spoke about generosity, taking delight in giving, you know, and how giving benefits us. And it makes us feel better about ourselves. So I want to give, I need to give. And then, you know, looking and seeing, well, how can I give? You know, what are my particular talents? Yeah, what are my particular skills? how can I give? And to see that giving isn't just, giving food or giving certain skills, but if we really want to benefit beings in the best way, the best way to benefit beings is to help them get out of cyclic existence. And how are we going to help them get out of cyclic existence if we're revolving in cyclic existence ourselves? It's the drowned trying to save the drowning, and the blind leading the blind, and we're not going to get anywhere. Okay, so we really need to practice the path and purify our own mind, develop our own good qualities, all the way to full awakening. Because as a Buddha, that's the best way to repay the kindness. Now, of course, it's going to take us a while to attain Buddhahood, but our practice, we do it with that altruistic intention, knowing that creating the causes to be able to benefit in the best way is also something that we're doing to repay the kindness of others, okay? But also to see that while we're on the path, and our spiritual practice is a way to repay the kindness, that we also want and need to repay some kindness now, that it can't always be, I'm aiming towards Buddhahood, I'm aiming towards Buddhahood, I'm aiming towards Buddhahood. Maybe at the point when we get to be great meditators, then, you can really be like that. And also at that point, you have the skill to benefit others in many, many different kind of ways. But at our level too, I think that we feel much more as whole people if we can interact with others and give something to them, okay? So here's where it comes in when you're doing chores around the Abbey. Instead of I'm on dishes today. I was on dishes yesterday. And lunch dishes are the worst because they have more dishes then. Why am I on dishes again? To see, wow, this is something I can do that directly benefits the people around me. I can wash their dishes. It's directly benefiting them. Fantastic. I'm working to become a Buddha, but I can do something right now. And then when you're out in the forest, or, you're weeding, or whatever you're doing, I'm doing this to benefit other living beings because, you work in the forest, you keep a healthy forest, all the animals and birds and chipmunks and other critters are very happy, less fire danger, So you really see how even actions that you might normally consider just chores can be transformed into, through your mind and your motivation to something where you're repaying the kindness of others, okay? And when we repay the kindness of others, I think we feel good about ourselves. Would you agree? Here I am, I'm doing something. I'm an efficacious person who can benefit this world. That's the way we feel. So it's good, in whatever way we can, to be of benefit. Even passing the catch-up. It's a small way to benefit others. And so keeping that in mind as much as possible and really making it part of our practice. In that regard, Venerable Jigme and I won't be here late this afternoon because the two of us are on the board of a local organization called Youth Emergency Services that helps homeless teens in our county. And we have an incredible number of homeless teens. It's a small county, but it's poor, and we have so many homeless teens. And so we're, trying to do what we can to apply for grants, to raise money, you know, to help the social workers who help the kids, you know, to do what we can to be a benefit. Yeah, so we have to go to a meeting this afternoon. Yeah, but you know, you look, and there's so many different ways to be of benefit, and to sometimes just even giving a smile to somebody, or offering to do a small thing for somebody. Yeah, many times people say to me, you know, how do I let my family know how wonderful the Dharma is? You know, it's like, I really like the Dharma, and it would be so great if my parents liked the Dharma. Can you imagine that? You know, my parents getting turned on to the Dharma. So what do I do? Yeah, what do I do to get my parents involved in the Dharma? And I say to them, take out the garbage. Yeah. Because how often do you take out the garbage at your parents' house? Yeah? It's like we leave that for our parents to do. So if you come back from a Dharma course and you're taking out the garbage without even being asked, because you're looking at the garbage and monitoring it, and you see when it needs to go out, your mom and dad are gonna go, oh my God, what happened to my kid? You know? How many years? My kid's how many years old? And this is the first time they took out the garbage? I like Buddhism. You know? They come back from a Buddhist retreat and look at that. They're taking out the garbage. Wow. They're helping with the dishes. They help with the laundry. They mow the lawn. My God, what happened to my kid? You know? And they're going to go, Buddhism is fantastic. Yeah? Because all of a sudden, there you are, being sensitive to your parents' needs, instead of taking them for granted. Yeah? And we so often have the mentality with our parents of, give me the car keys, but don't tell me what time to be home. You know that mentality? Yeah? And all of a sudden, instead of, not all of a sudden, but after this Buddhist course, you know, we're not doing that anymore. We're like treating our parents as kind, valuable individuals instead of as servants or slaves. Yeah? Imagine what that will do to your folks. It'll blow their minds. Yeah? And instead of, you know, always quarreling with them about this, that, and the other thing, just sometimes, you know, smiling and helping them out. I remember one time, my, what was it? I think my brother was getting married, and there was some kind of party, you know, family party. I don't like these kinds of things, but you know, a big family party in celebration of my brother getting married. And at breakfast that day, I was sitting with my mom and my sister and sister-in-law. Well, she wasn't my sister-in-law then, she was going to be my sister-in-law. And you know, I'm already 30-something years old. And my mom says, I think it'd be really nice if you wore XXXXX, you know? And I said, okay. And then afterwards, my sister and my future sister-in-law, we can't believe that. You're 30-something and she told you what to wear? And then you said yes? You know, it's like they were surprised at what she did and surprised at how I responded. And I said, yeah, you know I'm an autonomous individual. I don't need to fight for my independence with my parents anymore. You know, if it makes my mom happy, I'll do it. You know, it's like it's no sweat off of my back. So, you know, that was a change in me that before, no way. Yeah, tell me what to wear and I will, you know, wear the opposite and give you a big argument about why I should wear the other thing. Yeah. So when you appreciate the kindness and you want to give back on the kindness, then you see there's many small things that we can do. We don't have to make everything a contest of wills. Yeah. Now there's some things that, you know, we have to just say, Mom and Dad, I'm an adult now, I'll make my own decision. But the way you say that, there's different ways of saying it. Yeah. There's ways like, I know you're concerned about my safety and I know that's important to you. Yeah. And I will try and be safe and I will call you, you know, twice a month or whatever it is. Or drop you an email because I know that you care about me. Yeah, but this is something in my life that is very important for me to do, whether your parents agree or not. You know, but you explain it in a nice tone of voice. You acknowledge their concerns for your safety. You propose something to help allay their concerns. And that's very different than, why are you getting on my back again, telling me what to do? I'm an adult. Get off my back. I can take care of myself. You know, just get out of here and leave me alone. Which is so often the way people talk to their parents. Yeah? And here's the parents, you know, they're looking at us and they just see this adorable little baby that they love to bits. And they're always going to see us in an adorable baby they love to bits. I remember when my father was 60-something and my grandma told him to put on a sweater so he doesn't catch cold. You know, in my grandma's mind, my dad was still this adorable baby. Yeah, and she cares about him. And my dad didn't go, leave me alone, you know, I'm 65. You know, I'm telling my own kids and grandkids to put on sweaters, get off my back. No, you know, he realized, you know, it was a way for her to express her love. So you take it as that instead of as somebody trying to control you. Yeah? And then your speech changes and like your parents are going, oh my God, you know? They do have a nice voice after all. They can do something else besides yell and scream. Yeah? And insult and swear. So, you know, and it's just small ways to repay the kindness of people, you know, and we can still do what we need to do that we think is important, yeah, but we really take our parents' feelings into consideration. When I became a nun, my parents asked me to leave the house. They didn't speak to me for years, many years. I wrote them letters every month. They didn't answer. But I wrote them letters every single month because I knew that they cared about me and they would worry. Because I was in India or Nepal or who knows where our crazy daughter is at. But you know, I knew that they would be concerned. So I wrote letters, they never answered. That didn't matter. Yeah. So, you know, some small way to take other people's feelings into consideration. Yeah? Okay? And it doesn't mean that our parents have to control us. Not at all. Yeah. It doesn't boil down to that. Okay? And so, you know, the same way with other people, just, you know, really seeing people as kind and wanting to help. You know? And, I mean, I've failed at that many times myself. Yeah, my famous story is, yeah, many years ago I was in Knoxville, Tennessee. Can you imagine there were Buddhists in Knoxville, Tennessee? Anyway, so I was invited there and I gave some talks, and on the flight home, you know, I'm always very careful to book aisle seats because, you know, I don't like sitting in the middle seat, especially when there's 200-300-pound people on either side. And so I had booked an aisle seat, and I got on the flight going back to, I was living in Seattle at the time, and there was somebody else sitting in my seat. And so I showed her my boarding pass, and I said, "Oh, I think you're in my seat." And she said, "Oh, I was really hoping I could sit in an aisle seat for this trip." And I said, "Well, I want to sit in the aisle seat too." This was after a weekend about talking about bodhicitta. Yeah. And then, as soon as that came out of my mouth, I said, "That was the wrong thing to say, children." You know. And I said, "Well, okay, let's just share the seat, you know, half and half." And she said, "No, it's okay, you just sit there." And then, of course, I felt lousy the whole trip. But, you know, it was very interesting. I learned a lot from that, because that was my seat. And I was very attached to my seat. It wasn't her seat, it was my seat. But as soon as we landed in Seattle and I stood up, I didn't care who sat in that seat. It was no longer my seat. And I looked and I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? At one period of time, this is my seat, and who sits in that 1.5 by 1.5 space is of dire importance to me. And then a little time later, I don't care beans about who sits there. Isn't that interesting? Yeah? How the mind works. At one time, I'm like being mean to somebody, and the next moment, I don't care. Yeah? And I'm sure on that flight, thousands of people have sat in that same seat since that time I sat in it. And I don't care who sat in it. But for those 3.5 hours, it was crucially important to me that my tush was in that cush. And nobody else's tush was in that cush. Yeah? Very interesting. So, yeah, on one of the flights, on the April trip, then I had an aisle seat, and somebody was sitting in it, and it was clear she had a family, you know, she had kids and everything, and she said, would you mind trading seats with me? I'm sitting in that middle seat, 2 rows ahead. And I said, yes, I'll do it happily. And then I sat there, yeah. And then the stewardess, the flight attendant kept coming. "Oh, it was so kind of you to change seats. It was so kind of you to change seats." And I'm going, it was no big deal. You know, it's really no big deal. Why do you keep saying thank you? You know, probably because they've had fights on planes before about people not wanting to move. Okay? But I had learned my lesson. Yeah. So, okay. But what the point I'm getting at is, you know, really seeing what we've received from others and wanting to repay that kindness in whatever big or small way that is. Whether it means by helping somebody, you know, if we're asked or not asked, or refraining from inconveniencing people instead of being demanding and asking people to go out of their way and do things for us, to be considerate of others' feelings. Okay, so that was the motivation for the talk. Yes, we'll get into the regular talk now. Before we do, are there any questions or comments? Yeah.
With the story with your seat in the airplane, does that arise, your first interaction, did that arise because of like this fear of not having your expectation met with this idea of your comfort? Because you're like, oh, this is a trip, and I want to be comfortable, and then there's like the letting go of that sense of comfort. Mm-hmm. Would that be why we,
And so what's the question exactly? Is that why I wanted the seat, or is that
why you wanted the seat? Is that why there was such a...
Oh, yeah. It was attachment to my comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sitting in the middle seat is so uncomfortable, And I just got back from, teaching all weekend, and I wanted just a little bit of comfort, Yeah, and my comfort was more important than that person's comfort. Hmm? Other questions or comments? Yeah.
Yes, when you were talking about appreciating teachers, just finishing my first year of teaching, I've written so many thank you letters to all of my old teachers during this year.
Yes.
But I was thinking how, it took me having to be in that situation to fully appreciate, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much it took to plan a field trip, or, all the little things that they do, so.
Yep, yeah. We had one young man, he stayed with us for a while, and afterwards, he was from Seattle, he went back to I think it was his middle school, and apologized to some of his teachers, because when he was here, he started looking at like how bratty he had been. Yeah. But it's true, we don't know what goes into planning different things. And also with our parents, what it takes to raise a kid. My goodness. And what they went through. And, all we can see is they didn't do this and they didn't do that and they should have done and they should have not done. And, and yet our parents were doing the best they could given the situation that they had and given the way they grew up. Yeah. So it's quite interesting sometimes to really think about how your parents grew up and what they were taught and what they were experienced, when they were growing up. And then, I always find it very interesting to ask older people about their lives, because then you understand, okay, they had that kind of experience, so it conditioned them in this kind of way, and then a lot of what they say and do makes sense, And even if what they're saying or doing we think is wrong or dumb, still we can understand why they're doing it because of the situations that they encountered when they were growing up. Yeah? And then it becomes much easier to extend some patience and kindness towards our parents instead of expecting them to have been perfect. Yeah. At one, I was invited to lead some workshops at one conference. This, again, was many years ago. And so I got to attend the conference. So I was listening to one plenary speaker. So the plenary speaker, that's the person who addresses the huge thousands of people at the conference. So this guy, he was some famous, this was in the days of your inner child, everybody had their inner child. And so he was like talking about how You know, when he was a kid, he wanted so much to go to the baseball game with his dad. And all the other kids, their dads took them to baseball games, and his father never took him to the baseball game. Never. His father was always busy working or busy doing something else, and all he wanted was his dad to just take him to a baseball game. And he's telling the story, you know, kind of reliving it. You can see the anguish in his mind from his father not taking him to the baseball game. And I'm going, you should be happy. That's the biggest problem you have. You know? Really. It's like your dad not taking you to the baseball game. That should be, I hope that's the biggest problem you had growing up. Why are you hanging on to it? You know? And I just looked at this guy who was an expert of, you know, going, my goodness, you know, what is he teaching people? He's hanging on to something in the past that he can't do anything about, making it into this huge, enormous thing that is a trauma to him forever. And you know, I mean, I wasn't judging him, but I was just thinking, my goodness, look at how our mind works. That whatever situation we're in, we find something to complain about. Yeah? I mean, this is what the afflicted mind does to us. Because I'm sure he had food to eat when he was growing up. You know, his dad and mom too, probably both of them, you know, went to work to get the food. And maybe that's why his dad was not able to take him to the baseball game. Or maybe even if his dad was out gambling, yeah, how did his dad grow up? That his dad gambles to get a sense of relaxation, which of course doesn't relax him at all. But you know, kind of understanding maybe what was going on in his dad's life that made him make those choices, which maybe weren't the best choices. But, you know, I think his dad was probably doing the best he could given the circumstances that he himself faced and he himself grew up in. Yeah. And I thought, wow, I sure hope this expert can, you know, give up hanging on to that thing in the past that's causing him so much pain that he really doesn't need to experience. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my take on it anyway. Yeah? Because I just kept on thinking, you know, of the kids in Darfur. Mm-hmm. And like, forget baseball games. Yeah? I mean, these kids don't even know if they're going to be alive in the next day. But, you know, the way our mind works, the self-centered mind, is we will find anything and everything to complain about. It's really rather a pity, yeah? So, you know, if we learn how to think properly, then we don't need to be burdened by these kinds of things, you know, and hold resentment for our parents for years and years and decades and lifetimes. Because what's the use? Yeah, what's the use of resenting our parents? What's the use of resenting anybody? Doesn't do any good at all. Yeah. So releasing that, it doesn't mean what the other person did was okay. You know, gambling and wasting the family's money is not okay. But it's like, am I going to let that weigh on my heart and ruin my life when it's not happening now? Or can I release it and say, here was somebody who was doing the best he could given whatever he whatever was going on in his head. So, having some kind of forgiveness, some kind of compassion for other people, I think is quite important. So, compassion for our teachers, compassion for our parents, yeah.